Strengthening the cultural bridge between Africans and African Americans. My name is Ebony Tyson, and I just want to thank you all so much for tuning in.
Exactly.
Our first question for our local Eswati. Describe where Eswatini is on the map, and what was it like growing up in Eswatini for you during your childhood? Yes, Tendega.
Cool. So Eswatini on the map is just next to a very popular country in the south known as South Africa. Little landlocked country, just next to South Africa. So a lot of people don't even know
Mozambique
that there's an
South
Eswatini. So growing up in Eswatini, I would say quite non-eventful for the most part. I don't like using that term, but non-eventful, soft, great. The environment is conducive for mental expansion in the social sense. So you have a lot of time outside running around barefooted, which is great for brain development. And you have a lot of time to access natural resources freely without having to pay for entrance. So that's the great part about it. It's like not very capitalistic, commercialized country as of yet. Obviously, there are other aspects about growing up in the country. So you have your social aspects, you have your political aspects, you have economic aspects. So my state of consciousness didn't really start about those other issues until I got to my early 20s. So I'd say growth is a process. So as I've been growing, I've had a different set of experiences and processes. But like relatively, one word to describe it, great. Wouldn't have grown up anywhere else.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love how positive it is. We definitely need to hear that. Great. Sambulo, did you want to share?
No, nothing much. It seems like she has just emphasized everything.
Okay.
Eswatini is down at the African continent, next to South Africa and Mozambique, as she has just said. And it's a country which is, as for me, I was grateful growing up here in Eswatini because it's a country which is known as, it contains a lot of respect compared to some other countries, and we definitely know how to treat some other people and how to tolerate in a perfect way, you know. So I feel like I was in the right position because I know that there are some things which I shouldn't do maybe when I'm with an elder person. Just like maybe I won't be specific, maybe sharing some other countries as if they are just the cruel countries, but they are just some other countries as well. As for us, it was great, you know, here in Eswatini. So we'll always be positive by it.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing. I love that. Look, now I got to think about my stuff.
I know,
wanna be
right?
Okay. So for our African Americans, our question is, describe your hometown and what was it like growing up in your childhood environment in America?
You can go first.
You're going to let me go first?
Yeah,
Okay. So again, I am from Detroit, Michigan, which is like, they call it the Midwest, but to me it seems like it's more north. But like from where we have a place where in the downtown area is like Belle Isle, so you can actually see Canada on the other side, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sure.
very
Good maple
cold.
syrup.
Yeah, so it's very cold in the winters, but yeah, so it's nothing like home, right? And we'll talk about the misconceptions and all of that, but most people, when you think of Detroit, Michigan, it's like people shooting people, you know, being killed and all this stuff, but I feel like there's good and bad everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So there is bad, but there's also a lot of good. There's a lot of creativity. I mean, Detroit have bred some of the greatest people. I mean, you got Aaliyah, you got Aretha Franklin, you got so many people there. And Big Sean also, he went to my high school. He did go to my high school. Just gonna throw that out there. Yeah. And growing up in my childhood environment, so I have a older sister that I lived with. I have an older brother as well, but living in the home, I have my older sister, and during my early childhood, my parents were married, and it was great. It was nice, just being a kid, and I love how my family we were really surrounded around love. I think that's why I'm a very affectionate person, because my mom and dad were very loving parents, and we didn't have much, so I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. And we did struggle a lot, even after my parents divorced and my mom was, taking care of us. It was hard. We had times where it was cold, very cold, and we didn't have heat. We had to put blankets up on the window to protect us
Was
from.
the oven on?
Was the oven on? Yep. Had the oven open. Yeah. Yeah. So there were those times where it was very hard. And I honestly, looking back at everything, I don't take any of that for granted, because it shaped me into the woman that I am today. So, yeah.
Props. So I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. We're known for quite a few things: barbecue, blues, and our recent violence, I guess I'll say that. There was one summer in Memphis where we weren't allowed to go outside because maybe on average 2 to 3 or 2 to 5 people could be killed. And so that summer we didn't go outside. But my family, we were rooted in tennis and religion for sure. That's my background. But Memphis is a pretty large city. Represent that 901. Midtown is Memphis. And it's a historical city. With relations to the civil rights movement, to the Civil War, to yellow fever happening twice. And also there's a fault line that goes through Memphis too. So we have some interesting things that do happen, including the Mississippi River, which again, we have so many songs based on events in Memphis or within the Mid-South. But again, my family, we were a close-knit family, my 2 sisters, my mom and dad, and then my grandmother and her cousins. We were a close-knit family. And growing up in a Roman Catholic church and family, it was very interesting. I don't so much follow my Catholicism anymore, but it's still there. Catholic guilt weighs heavy on some of us, but we're here. But I, like Ebony said, it was rough for some moments, but we're here, and it shaped me to who I am, and what it made help me make the decision to come into Peace Corps. So I'm very thankful for those moments. Tough moments, though, some trauma. But again, trauma shapes us into who we are, and you have to use that energy to really move forward and help other people because we're in this together.
Yeah. I like that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we already getting into it. So our next question for our African Swatis, what does your surname mean? And briefly talk about your family's ancestral heritage.
Okay, as for me, because I represent Maswati. As for me, Liswati, our surname is a very, very important thing, because we grew up they've told us, we don't know, but they've told us that a surname, it was a name of the former members of that family. So it tells us who was one after another when it goes backwards, because we won't be able to know all the people. But the surname helps us to maybe open up the mind, know that, there was this person and there was this person. Fine, maybe we won't even trust some others, because they can't be able to lie and all the stuff. But we have to believe and trust what they've just told us. Okay, when it comes to ancestral heritage, we also, as for us as Maswati, we also used to talk maybe with our lost one, our ancestors and all the stuff, and whereby you are about to talk to those, you need to know the surname, and you need to back them using the surname and all the stuff. They say it Gupahla here in Eswatini, meaningly a surname is a very, very, very important thing, because you won't be able to do all the things when you don't know the surname. Exactly. So I feel like it means a lot.
Okay.
It means a lot as for us in Maswati. Angati maybe Sisi can add something on that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Nanatelo, did you give a praise name?
Yeah, the praise name. Those are the former members.
Yeah. I mean, you want to share it?
Yeah, I
with
was going to
everyone.
ask. I'm sorry. I was going to ask you. Your last name is Kumalo. So
Yeah.
what is your praise name?
Yeah.
Oh, like Kumalo. Kumalo Mdunga, you know, that Mdunga zigot mzilgas kama shobani. But they said Mbulazi. They said umuntu miyenga ngendaba. They used to phrase that on a bad way because it's like you ate wadla umuntu umiyenga ngendaba. While isn't like that, it's like wadla uyenga umuntu. Meaningly you were sharing lies to the person while eating. Not that you ate that person using lies. They actually are phrased it on that way while it's a bad one. You know. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's it. Kumalo Mdunga sigot msilgas kama shobani. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. I don't know.
Yeah. That sounds great. You know, when you think about, I think my favorite thing about the Swazi language is the color. Swati is a very colorful language. So if you hear, like he was saying, Umziligas Gamashobane here, is that your surname carries a very important part of your identity in our contextual, like, sort of existence, you know. So it's easier for someone to identify you with your surname than it is for them to identify you with your name. In Siswati, we have a saying that says, umuntu ulandzela igama lakhe, meaning that a person will follow their name. So if you're named and you're given a name, then you will follow that name. And a surname is sort of
and it's
an extension to that name. So if, for instance, my surname is Malaza, and my praise name is Malaza nabonkosi mbulunga lelihle lasemawohlweni nabonza budivenga bani divenga bomshengishabalala naboqotshonga emsilweni dinyawetika encane entakhumzo omkhulu. So it's sort of saying to you that my name is Malaza. My ancestral name is Malaza. So like he was trying to explain that sometimes when you're communicating with the other side of the world, your name Tandega is just a name. It's the first layer. But when you become recognized, that's when you use the second inference of your name, because there have been other Malazas that have existed before you. So yes, maybe there have been other Tandegas that existed, but where is the link of where you come from? Because we all have a history of where we come from. So the surname for us is a very important part of identifying who you are, and not just for you on a personal level, but also within a social context. So I'll also make an example. My surname has that line that says Nabonza Divenga Bomsheng Shabalala. And Msheng Shabalala is a surname for another, it's a praise name for another surname.
Exactly.
So you also find that your cousins and the people you're related to are pronounced in your clan name. So I might be a Malaza, but I'm related to a Mabuza kind of situation, you know. So you'll hear a lot of people say Dlamini, Mlangeni, Nkosi, but they all come from the same kind of genre family because there are similarities within their praise names and their clan names. So what does it mean to me? I would say that my surname is a capsule for my identity. And when I say a capsule for my identity, I just mean, of course, there are other things that encapsulate who I am. But the first identifiable thing about me within the Swati context is my surname. It's how people know who my father is. It's how people know who my father's father is. And it's also how we're able to keep track of our existence through the ages. Because like Mziliga Zamatubane said over here, you have stories that are told in those. You know, for mine says, she who has small feet but will build a great home. That's the direct translation.
Powerful.
So it's sort of like it tells you and it sets you up for sort of like the future and you knowing who you are.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, that's it. That's actually it.
I love that. Okay. I just want to sit and think about that. Wow, that was good. Okay, so for our question, for our African American Peace Corps volunteers. We just throw that out.
Mm-hmm,
Peace Corps volunteers.
mm-hmm.
What do you know about your ethnic African roots and heritage? Do you mind if I go first?
Oh, please, no,
Okay.
go for it.
So I'm actually going to provide some background information because, and it's very important what you said because it's kind of the opposite for us and what we lack.
Yeah.
For most of us. So enslavement, I actually got this from a news article from NBC. Enslavement, a centuries-long campaign designed to strip its victims of any essence, both erase names
Go ahead.
and severed family histories. Before emancipation, which was basically a time where technically the slaves were free during that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave that there. So before they were freed, those fleeing an enslaver would actually change their name to remain anonymous. Now, after emancipation, so after they were considered free, once they could formally establish who they were, absent of their enslavers' influence, many black folks chose the surname Freeman or Freedman. Others went with Washington, Williams, which in my case, Brown or Johnson, which is also in my case. Surnames typical before enslavement that remain relevant today. So some newly freed black folks who could read chose unique names they saw in newspapers despite lacking a connection to that family. Some even named themselves after aspirational black figures like Frederick Douglass. So therefore, most black people today don't know where we come from and or can go only so far because we don't have that original information to tie us back to our roots. We don't know what was our original last name. And I think that is okay, I'll go on to what I think. Let me just tell you about me. So all I know is that my great-great-great-grandmother on my mother's side was actually Native American. Her name was Aaron Williams. So Williams obviously is not her real last name. But that's what my grandmother said. That's just, they call her Grandma Aaron. And she's probably from a Cherokee tribe. So that's as much as we know, pretty much. And I also did a maternal African ancestry DNA test that said that I had ethnic roots within the Fula people living in the Guinea-Bissau, the Kru people living in Liberia, and the Mende and Timne people living in Sierra Leone. And actually, what was pretty interesting in my research, I saw that for the Mende and Timne tribe, or people living in Sierra Leone, it was a lot of people that you'll find a lot in America. You'll find a lot of people who actually moved to like South during slavery when they were transported to America. They a lot of people in like South Carolina. I want to say also it was like North Carolina in my research. A lot of them have were people coming from their ancestors were coming from Sierra Leone. So yeah, that's all I know. But I think what we'll talk about more is that it's still that hole, right? That's still that void of that's not being filled because and it wasn't our ancestors' fault. Those who were enslaved and they wanted to start over. You kind of want to just try to fit. You're trying to figure out, okay, now I'm freed. They done removed all my family histories, probably stuff that they brought over, if they could have brought anything over. Were probably lost or burnt up. We don't know. So, yeah, that's my take.
Oh,
yeah, and I will continue on your point, if I may, to say, not only don't we have these missing aspects, but it was could have been separated from your family at an auction. You could have been separated from your family from the Civil War itself. You could have been separated from your family from the massacre from Alabama or Oklahoma or so forth and so forth, right? There's so many things, events that we don't know that could have transpired to our ancestors that leave so many gaps. On top of that, right, like the spoken language then for us, our ancestors, right, was it oral? Were they educated? Did they have the ability to write? We don't know. All that we have is the research that we can find, which is in itself a whole another story about how do you archive Black history in America, right? Like, what are the textbooks telling us? But I'll whole nother thing. But so my last name is Owens, but that's not the actual last name. The last name is Owen. So my aunt, God bless, rest in peace, Aunt May, she legally changed our name to add an S to Owen. So it's Owens. But when you research Owen, it's Celtic Welsh, so coming from Wales. And you're like, what is this UK name doing within my family? I don't know. But it's very interesting. But my older sister, who's also a former Peace Corps volunteer in Mauritania, she's done some of this research too. Not on the extent that Alex Haley or others have done, right? Because there's a little bit of privilege there when you have the access to go into these archives and museums to do the actual history and the search. But what we found that we have some really deep history in the South from my mother's family, my father's family, and even from our family on the West Coast. So, we have bits and pieces that we can put together, but it's not the full picture of the full praise name. The other thing I really want to add really quickly is that not all of our family members want to share their history either. It's very unfortunate that I know about my paternal family, but I know very little about my maternal family. I don't know much about my grandmother, Honey. I don't know much about her husband or her previous marriages, though. I know that there were tons of uncles and aunts on my mom's family, and it dwindled down to 3 brothers and 4 sisters. Wow. But there was more of that. There was like 11 of them all together, total. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know about those uncles, those aunties. What I know is that, like, I have my mom and my aunt and my Aunt Betty that we still talk to, but that's about it. And we have history in Chicago. We have history in California. We have history in Louisiana. We have history in, I think there's a few in New York. And I'm like, what? Huh? Are they our last name? And then sometimes you only find out that you're related through a Facebook message, right? That's how we find out if you're a family. Like, who's this new person? Oh, that's your brother.
I'm your cousin.
Don't say anything, right? Like, it's all these other secrets that we're not supposed to know. But that's just some of the realities that we face when it comes to trying to get into that information. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
It seems like we've got a lot of things in common.
Yeah. And I wanted to add, too, I didn't mention about the paternal side. I don't know where to start on that side. So I just know we got Tyson. I'm not related to Mike Tyson, y'all. I wish I was, because I sure asked for a couple dollars, but I'm not.
First day you messaged me, I thought you were.
Yeah, right?
Look, she's a scrapper. She didn't tell you that.
She's a fighter. I don't know, but
You should do a research.
So, I should, right? So it's very overwhelming because you don't know where to start. It's like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. Then you have our elders, some of them don't know or have passed on. And like I said, you can only go so far. So it's very overwhelming to not have that information. So thank you all for sharing that.
Yeah. So as I was listening to you guys share your stories, there's a book I read, Homegoing. By Yakiasi. So I just book suggestion for everyone.
Okay.
And I got so teary while you were speaking because this is the history that she narrates in her book about Ghanaians being enslaved and being sent on ships to America. And in the end, in the book, she kind of contrasts 2 different realities of the sister who was shipped off to America and the sister who remained in Ghana. And you realize just how much, it's the intricacies of who I am and where do I come from and my identity are so deeply woven in all the things that you might not ever even know. Like, you were referring to about archiving that data. So it's a very painful and heartbreaking thing, and I don't think you guys have spoken about it, but I think people say it over and over again, but there is a real kind of separation of, okay, what was my original surname and where did they go and where do they come from? So just wanted to say there's a book that I think everyone would enjoy at the table. Just like to add after our discussion,
Yes.
if you're keen on reading it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank
We'll put a
you.
link
Thank
down
you.
below in the chat.
Please be a part of the conversation by commenting below, and sharing and spreading the knowledge is the first step to strengthening the cultural bridge between Africans and African Americans. Again, my name is Ebony Tyson, and we are sending you love all the way from Eswatini, Africa. Let me